The afternoon light filtered through lace curtains in gentle waves, casting patterns across the hardwood floor that had witnessed 5 decades of life. Mia Hart sat in her favorite armchair, the one Dominic had insisted on buying 40 years ago, despite her protests about the cost. Her hands, elegant even at 74, rested on the worn leather armrests. Around her, the living room hummed with the comfortable chaos of family. Photographs lined every surface. The mantel held their history in silver frames. A young woman with dark hair standing in front of a gallery. A man in a charcoal suit, his hand at the small of her back. A wedding photograph, intimate and joyful. A baby girl, then a granddaughter, now great-grandchildren. Great-grandma Mia. The voice belonged to Sophie, 7 years old with curious eyes that reminded Mia of her own at that age. The child climbed into her lap with the easy affection of youth. Mommy says you and great-grandpa have been married forever. Mia smiled, feeling the familiar weight of memory settling over her like a beloved shawl. Through the doorway, she could see Dominic in the kitchen, 84 now but still moving with purpose, as he argued with their grandson about the proper way to prepare marinara sauce. Some things never changed. Not quite forever, sweetheart. 50 years this October. That's still really old. Sophie's honesty carried no malice, only the straightforward assessment of a child for whom 50 years represented an incomprehensible expanse of time. It is, Mia agreed. Her fingers found the pearl necklace at her throat, the one her mother had given her on her wedding day. Would you like to know a secret? Sophie nodded eagerly, pressing closer. When I met your great-grandfather, I was only 24 years old. Just a girl, really, though I thought I was all grown up. Mia's voice took on the cadence of storytelling, a skill honed over decades of bedtimes and holidays. I was terrified of him, terrified of what he made me feel, terrified of wanting something so much it could break me. But you married him anyway, Sophie said, as if this were the obvious conclusion to any story. I did. But sweetheart, let me tell you how it happened. Because some stories are worth remembering, especially the ones that start with being brave when you are scared. The room around them seemed to recede. The chatter of family, the clinking of dishes, the drone of the television all faded into background noise. Mia closed her eyes and let herself fall backward through time, through the layers of years and experience, past the gray hair and the arthritis and the grandchildren. Back to that September day in 1998 when she was young and uncertain and standing too close to a painting. It started, she said softly, with a stranger and a piece of art and 6 words that changed everything. The gallery, September 1998. There are moments in life when the ordinary becomes extraordinary without warning. When the universe shifts on its axis so subtly that you do not realize anything has changed until later. When you look back and see the before and after with startling clarity. For Mia Clark, that moment arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in September, 3 hours before sunset, in a gallery that smelled of linseed oil and possibility. She stood alone in the Meridian Gallery, her tablet tucked under one arm, lost in the contemplation of a massive abstract painting that dominated the east wall. The canvas measured 8 feet by 10, a riot of color and movement that seemed almost violent up close. Crimson bled into midnight blue. Gold leaf caught the fading light. Black lines slashed across the composition like wounds. The gallery itself was a converted warehouse in Chelsea, all exposed brick and soaring ceilings and industrial chic. Late afternoon sun poured through the tall windows, turning dust motes into dancing stars and casting long rectangles of honey-colored light across the polished concrete floor. Tomorrow night, this space would be packed with collectors and critics and people who spoke about art with affected authority. Tonight it belonged to Mia and the paintings and the comfortable silence of work. She had been at this job for 3 years, assistant curator. It sounded more impressive than it was. Mostly she organized exhibitions, wrote catalog copy, dealt with shipping companies and insurance adjusters, and made sure no one got too drunk at openings and knocked over a sculpture. But she loved it. Loved being surrounded by beauty created by hands that dared to express what words could not capture. Her mother thought it was a waste of her Columbia degree. Her mother thought a lot of things. Mia pushed that thought away and focused on the painting before her. Something about it bothered her. The composition felt wrong somehow, unbalanced, though she could not articulate exactly why. She took a step closer, squinting at the texture of the paint, the way the artist had layered color upon color until the surface became almost 3-dimensional. You are standing too close. The voice came from behind her, deep and smooth, with an edge of amusement that made her spine straighten instantly. Not threatening, not cruel, simply observant. The voice of someone who knew he was right and did not need to prove it. Mia turned quickly, nearly dropping her tablet, and found herself looking up at a man who seemed to occupy more space than his physical form should allow. He was tall, easily 6'2". Dark hair fell just slightly over his forehead in a way that suggested he had recently run his hands through it. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, the kind that whispered wealth without shouting it. But it was his eyes that caught her, dark and intelligent, and watching her with an intensity that made her breath hitch. "I'm sorry?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended, and she hated herself for it. "The painting." He gestured with one hand while the other remained casually in his pocket. "You are standing too close. Step back about 6 feet. That's where the composition reveals itself." Mia blinked. There was something in his tone, not condescending exactly, but certain. The voice of someone who knew he was right and did not need to prove it. She found herself both irritated and intrigued. She took 3 steps back, then 3 more, and suddenly the chaotic swirls of color aligned into something else entirely. A hidden landscape that had not been visible up close, hills rolling beneath a turbulent sky, the suggestion of a figure standing at the edge of a cliff. It was breathtaking. "Oh." She heard him chuckle softly, a sound that seemed to resonate in her chest. He moved to stand beside her, maintaining a respectful distance that somehow felt more intimate than if he had stood closer. "The artist was clever," he said, still looking at the painting. "He painted 2 paintings in one. Up close, it's pure abstraction. From here, it's a memory." Mia turned to look at him properly. His profile was strong, angular jaw, straight nose, lips that suggested he smiled more often than he frowned. There was something about the way he carried himself that spoke of confidence without arrogance, power without aggression. "You know the artist?" she asked, finding her professional voice again. "I own 3 of his pieces," he replied, still looking at the painting, "and I'm considering buying this one, which is why I'm here early before tomorrow's chaos." He finally turned to face her fully, and Mia felt the full weight of his attention like a physical thing. It was uncomfortable and exhilarating at once, being seen so completely by a stranger. "I'm assuming you work here," he said. It was not quite a question. "Assistant curator," Mia said, straightening her shoulders. "Mia, and you are someone who appreciates art," he said with a slight smile that suggested he was used to not giving his name immediately. "But you can call me Dominic if you need something to write on your tablet." There was a playfulness in his tone that made Mia's lips twitch despite herself. She felt off balance, wrong-footed, as if this conversation was a dance, and she did not know the steps, but he was somehow leading anyway. "Dominic, who buys expensive paintings and shows up early to private viewings," she said, more confident now. "Dominic, who believes art should be experienced without crowds," he corrected. "Tell me, Mia the assistant curator, do you love what you do, or do you just like being surrounded by pretty things?" The question was direct but not unkind. Most people in his position would have made small talk about the weather, or the exhibition, or the state of the contemporary art market. Instead, he asked her about herself, about what mattered. Mia considered it, really considered it, because something about this man made her want to answer honestly. "I love that art makes people feel things they did not know they could feel," she said slowly. "I love being the person who helps create that moment." "Good answer." The approval in his voice sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. "Most people in your position would have said something about preserving culture or supporting artists, but you said the truth. You are a translator between the art and the people." Mia felt seen in a way she had not experienced before. Truly seen. Not assessed or judged or measured against expectations, but recognized for exactly what she was. "That's exactly what it is," she said softly. They stood in silence for a moment, both looking at the painting, and Mia became acutely aware of the space between them. Maybe 2 feet, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something subtle and expensive. Cedar and something darker she could not name. Something that made her think of autumn nights and leather and the pages of old books. "Are you here alone?" he asked. The question should have felt dangerous, should have triggered all her mother's warnings, but instead it felt like an invitation to honesty. "Just me and about 100 paintings," Mia said. "The opening is tomorrow night. I'm doing final checks." Dominic nodded slowly as if processing information. "Then you will be busy tomorrow, managing crowds, answering questions, making sure no one touches what they should not touch." "That's the job," Mia agreed. "Have dinner with me tonight." It was not quite a question, but it was not quite a demand either. It was something in between. a bridge he was building and waiting to see if she would cross. Mia's heart kicked against her ribs. She had been asked out before, of course, but never like this. Never by someone who looked at her like she was a puzzle he wanted to understand rather than a conquest he wanted to claim. "I do not even know your last name," she said, which was a deflection, and they both knew it. "Do you need to know it?" he asked gently. "For dinner, for conversation, for getting to know whether you enjoy my company?" He had a point, and Mia felt something shift inside her, some small rebellion against the careful, cautious way she had been living, against her mother's warnings and her own fears and the safe, small life she had built around avoiding risk. "Just dinner?" she asked, and hated how uncertain she sounded. "Just dinner," he confirmed, "at a restaurant with other people around where you can leave whenever you want, where the only expectation is good food and better conversation." He paused. "Unless you do not want to, in which case I will buy my painting tomorrow, and we will both wonder what might have happened if you had said yes." The honesty of it disarmed her completely. No games, no manipulation, just straightforward desire and the freedom to accept or refuse without consequence. Mia took a breath, felt the weight of 24 years of caution, and let it go. "Okay," she said. "Dinner." His smile transformed his face from handsome to devastating. "Good. The restaurant." The restaurant Dominic chose was not what Mia expected. She had imagined something pretentious, white tablecloths and waiters who looked down their noses at anyone who did not know which fork to use. The kind of place where wealthy men took women they wanted to impress with money rather than substance. Instead, he brought her to a small Italian place tucked into a side street in the West Village, the kind of restaurant you could walk past 100 times without noticing. But the moment they stepped through the door, warmth enveloped them. The smell of fresh bread and garlic and tomatoes simmering in olive oil, the sound of conversation and laughter, and the clink of wine glasses. The owner, a round man with a magnificent mustache, greeted Dominic by name and pulled him into a bear hug. They spoke rapid Italian, too fast for Mia to follow, though she caught words here and there. Family, grandmother, Naples. "This is one of my favorite places in the city," Dominic said as they were led to a corner table. The walls were exposed brick, warm and honey-colored in the candlelight. Maybe 15 tables total, each occupied by couples or small groups talking in low, intimate voices. "The chef is from Naples. Everything on the menu is his grandmother's recipes." Mia slid into her seat, accepting the worn leather menu with a smile. The informality of it eased something tight in her chest. This was not a man trying to buy her admiration. This was a man sharing something he loved. "How did you find it?" she asked. "I got lost," he admitted with a grin that transformed his face from handsome to devastating. 3 years ago, I was supposed to meet a client at some trendy place 2 blocks over. I took a wrong turn, ended up here, and decided anywhere that smelled this good could not be a mistake." Mia laughed, a real laugh that surprised her with its ease. "So you stood up your client." "I rescheduled," Dominic corrected, "and I have been coming here every week since." The waiter appeared, an older man with kind eyes, and rattled off the specials in rapid Italian. Dominic responded in the same language, fluid and natural, and Mia felt her eyebrows rise. "You speak Italian?" she asked when the waiter departed. "My mother is from Florence," he explained. "I spent summers there as a child. Some things you do not forget." He leaned back in his chair, studying her in that way he had, like she was a painting he was trying to understand. "Tell me something about Mia, the assistant curator, that is not on any resume." Mia considered the question while she sipped the water that had appeared at her elbow. The easy answer would be something safe and surface level. But he had been honest with her, about getting lost, about his mother, about wanting to know her. "I wanted to be an artist," she said finally. "I painted all through high school, thought I would go to art school, become the next great something. But halfway through my first semester, I realized I loved looking at art more than making it. I loved understanding why it worked. What made one piece speak and another just sit there silently." "So you changed directions," Dominic said. It was not a question. "I changed directions," Mia confirmed. "My parents were relieved. They had been terrified I would end up starving in a studio apartment." Dominic's expression shifted, something knowing and almost sad crossing his face. "Parents often want safety more than they want our happiness." "Yours did not," Mia asked, catching the implication. "Mine wanted empire building," he said simply. "They got it. Whether it made me happy was never part of the equation." There was a weight to those words that made Mia want to reach across the table, but she kept her hands wrapped around her water glass instead. Are you happy? She asked softly. Dominic was quiet for a moment, and Mia watched something vulnerable flicker across his face before he answered. I am learning to be. Some of us take longer to figure out what we actually want versus what we were told we should want. The waiter returned with wine, a rich red that Dominic must have ordered in Italian. When Mia hesitated before accepting, he noticed immediately. You do not drink? I do, Mia said. Just, my mother raised me to be careful about everything. Careful is not bad, Dominic's voice was gentle. It means you value yourself. It was such a simple statement, but it reframed her mother's obsessive caution in a way Mia had never considered. Not as distrust of the world, but as recognition of self-worth. Soon after came bread, warm and crusty, with olive oil that tasted like summer. They talked easily about art and travel, about books and the way cities change when you are not looking, about small, beautiful things that most people overlooked. Mia found herself relaxing in a way she rarely did, found herself laughing at his dry observations and offering her own in return. You are different than I expected, Dominic said during a lull in conversation after their pasta had arrived. His carbonara and her seafood linguine steamed between them, filling the air with competing aromas of cream and garlic. Different how? Mia asked, twirling pasta around her fork. Younger, he said, then quickly added, I do not mean that in a patronizing way. I mean there is something unspoiled about you, something that has not been touched by cynicism yet. Mia felt heat rise in her cheeks, and not entirely from the compliment. There was something in the way he said the word touched that felt like it meant more than one thing. I am 24, she said. Not exactly a child. No, Dominic agreed, his dark eyes holding hers. Definitely not a child. The air between them shifted, became charged with something Mia could not name but could feel in her pulse, in the way her skin seemed more sensitive, more aware. How old are you? She asked, needing to break the intensity. 34, he said. Too old for some things, too young to give up on others. Mia wanted to ask what he meant, but the waiter appeared to clear their plates and offer dessert. Dominic ordered tiramisu to share, and when it arrived, he slid it to the center of the table with 2 spoons. They ate slowly, and Mia was hyper-aware of every moment their eyes met, every accidental brush of their hands reaching for the same bite. Can I ask you something personal? Dominic said as they finished, his voice lower than before. Mia's heart rate picked up. You can ask. Why did you say yes tonight? His gaze was steady on hers. To dinner with a stranger. That is not something you do regularly, is it? Mia set down her spoon carefully. No, it is not. Then why? There was genuine curiosity in his voice, and something else. Something that suggested her answer mattered more than casual conversation. She took a breath, finding the words as she spoke them. Because you asked like you actually wanted to know me. Not like you wanted to conquer me or collect me. Like you were interested in what was inside, not just what you could see. Dominic's expression softened in a way that made him look younger, less guarded. That is exactly what I wanted. To know you. They left the restaurant after Dominic insisted on paying, and despite Mia's half-hearted protests, she let him. Because something about the evening felt like it existed outside normal rules. The night air was cool against her skin, autumn settling into the city with its crisp edges and smell of distant wood smoke. Dominic walked beside her with an easy stride that matched hers despite his longer legs, his hands in his pockets. Where do you live? He asked it not like he was planning to invite himself, but like he wanted to know which direction to walk her. About 6 blocks east, Mia said, pointing, near the park. I will walk you. It was not a question, and they turned together down the quieter side street. The street lights cast pools of amber light at regular intervals, and between them the darkness felt intimate rather than threatening. They walked in comfortable silence for a block before Mia found herself speaking. Can I ask you something now? Fair's fair, Dominic replied with a slight smile. What do you do? For work, I mean. You mentioned building an empire. You are buying expensive paintings, but I realized I do not actually know. Dominic was quiet for a few steps. I run an investment firm. My father started it. I expanded it. We handle portfolios for people who have more money than they know what to do with and want someone to make it multiply. That sounds lonely, Mia said, and then immediately regretted it because it was too direct, too presumptuous. But Dominic did not seem offended. It is. Most of my relationships are transactional. People want something from me. Connections, money, status. It is rare to meet someone who just wants conversation. Mia felt that same warmth from earlier, the feeling of being seen. Is that what you want from me? Just conversation? Dominic stopped walking. Mia stopped too, turning to face him under a streetlight. He looked at her with such intensity that she felt pinned in place, but not uncomfortably, like a butterfly under glass, but one that had chosen to stay. I want to know you, he said carefully. I want to understand what makes you laugh, what makes you think, what you are afraid of, what you dream about. And if that leads somewhere else, if you want it to, then I want that too. But only if you want it. Mia's breath caught. She had never had someone lay out desire so clearly, so honestly, without pressure or expectation. I do not know what I want, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. That's okay, Dominic said gently. You do not have to know tonight. They started walking again, and Mia felt something loosening in her chest, some knot she had not realized she had been carrying. They talked about small things as they walked, the buildings they passed, the orange cat that watched them from a window, the way the city sounded different at night. When they reached her building, a modest brownstone divided into apartments, Mia stopped at the steps. This is me, she said, suddenly not wanting the evening to end. Thank you, Dominic said, for the conversation, for saying yes. Mia smiled. Thank you for asking. She expected him to ask for her number, to suggest seeing her again, but he just stood there, hands still in his pockets, looking at her with that same careful intensity. Will you be at the gallery tomorrow? He asked instead. All day, Mia confirmed. Then I will see you there. And maybe if you are not too busy, you can tell me more about why you love what you do. Mia nodded, not trusting her voice. She turned to climb the steps and was halfway up when she heard him speak again. Mia, she turned. You are not what I expected either. You are better. Before she could respond, he smiled once, a real smile that reached his eyes, and walked away into the night. Mia stood on the steps long after he disappeared around the corner, her heart doing complicated things in her chest, and realized she was already looking forward to tomorrow in a way she had not looked forward to anything in years. The gallery opening, that night Mia lay in her small bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the evening. The way Dominic had looked at her, the way he had listened like every word mattered. The way he had made her feel seen without making her feel exposed. She thought about his hands, strong and elegant, and wondered what they would feel like against her skin. The thought made heat pool low in her belly, unfamiliar and slightly frightening. Mia had kissed boys before, had let one boyfriend touch her over her clothes in college, but it had never felt right, never felt like something she wanted to chase. Her mother's warnings had been too loud, her own fear too present. But Dominic was different. He made her want things she had spent years telling herself she did not need. Sleep came slowly, and when it did, it was full of dark eyes and careful smiles, and the phantom sensation of being truly seen for the first time in her life. The next morning, Mia woke early, too full of nervous energy to stay in bed. She showered carefully, chose her outfit with more thought than usual. A deep green dress that made her eyes brighter. She arrived at the gallery an hour before she needed to. The space was already transformed. The paintings hung perfectly. The lighting adjusted to show each piece at its best. Other staff members drifted in, the senior curator arriving with his usual cloud of stress, the caterers setting up in the back room. Mia moved through her checklist mechanically, her mind half elsewhere, wondering when Dominic would arrive, what he would say, whether last night had meant what she thought it meant. The gallery opening began at 6. By 6:30, the space was pleasantly crowded with the kind of people who could afford to buy art that cost more than Mia made in a year. She moved through the crowd in her professional capacity, answering questions, directing people to the wine table, making sure no one got too close to the pieces. She had been watching the door without meaning to, her heart jumping every time someone new arrived. He came at 7, when the crowd was at its peak and the noise had risen to a pleasant hum of conversation and clinking glasses. Mia saw him the moment he entered, impossible to miss in a dark suit that made him look like he had stepped out of an old film. His eyes found hers across the room immediately, like he had been looking for her too. The small smile he gave her made her stomach flip. She wanted to go to him immediately, but professional obligation kept her circulating, kept her playing her role. She watched from the corner of her eye as Dominic moved through the space, stopping at each painting with genuine interest, occasionally making notes on his phone. Several people approached him, clearly recognizing him, and Mia felt a small stab of something that might have been jealousy, watching a tall blonde woman touch his arm while she spoke. He was polite but distant. And after a few minutes, he excused himself and made his way through the crowd directly to where Mia stood. "You look beautiful," he said quietly, close enough that only she could hear. "Thank you," Mia managed, very aware of how close he was standing, close enough that she could smell his cologne again, that cedar and darkness that made her want to lean in. "Are you working all night?" "Until 9, she said, and then the senior curator takes over and I am free." Something sparked in Dominic's dark eyes. "Have a drink with me after?" "Not here. Somewhere quieter." Mia knew she should be cautious, should take things slowly, should listen to all those warnings her mother had planted. But standing this close to him, feeling the pull of whatever this was between them, caution felt like a luxury she did not want to afford. "Yes," she said. "Good." The satisfaction in his voice sent shivers down her spine. "I will wait." And he did. Mia watched him from across the room as the evening progressed, saw him examine paintings with careful attention, saw him politely deflect conversations when people tried to monopolize his time. Every so often their eyes would meet, and each time the air seemed to thin a little more. The space between them seemed to pulse with possibility. At 9 exactly, the senior curator took over as promised. Mia retrieved her coat from the back office. When she emerged, Dominic was waiting near the door, his own coat already on. "Ready?" he asked. Mia nodded and they slipped out into the cool night together. The car. He had called a car, a sleek black sedan that pulled up the moment they stepped outside. The driver opened the door without speaking, and Dominic gestured for Mia to enter first. Inside, the leather seats were soft and the space felt private, intimate, despite the driver separated by a partition. The door closed with a heavy, expensive sound, sealing them into their own world. "Where are we going?" Mia asked as the car pulled smoothly into traffic. "My place," Dominic said, and then quickly added, seeing her expression, "I have a better view than any bar and wine that is older than both of us. But if you would rather go somewhere public, just say the word." Mia's heart was racing. Going to his apartment was crossing a line, was moving this from maybe something to definitely something. Every ounce of caution in her body screamed to say no, to ask for that public bar instead. But the part of her that had said yes to dinner last night, the part that was tired of living small and scared, spoke instead. "Your place is fine," she heard herself say. Dominic studied her carefully. In the dim light of passing street lamps, his face was all sharp angles and shadow. "You are sure because, Mia, I need you to be sure. If you come home with me, I am going to want things. And I need to know you want them too, or that you will tell me the moment you do not." The directness of it, the honest laying out of intention, made Mia's breath catch. "What kinds of things?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dominic's voice dropped lower, more intimate in the enclosed space. "I want to know you. Not just your favorite color or what you studied in school. I want to know what makes your breath catch. What makes you forget to be careful. I want to know what you taste like. What sounds you make when someone touches you the right way." Heat flooded Mia's body, pulling between her thighs in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. Her hands gripped the edge of the leather seat. "I have never," she started, then stopped, unsure how to say it. "Never what?" Dominic asked gently. No judgment in his voice, just curiosity. Mia took a breath, forcing herself to meet his eyes. "I have never been with anyone. I have kissed people, but I have never, I am still—" She could not say the word. It felt too vulnerable, too exposing, but Dominic understood. She saw comprehension dawn in his eyes, followed by something that looked almost like reverence. "You are a virgin," he said softly. There was no mockery in it, no disappointment, just statement of fact. "Yes," Mia whispered, waiting for him to pull back, to change his mind, to decide she was too much work. Instead, Dominic reached across the seat and took her hand. His thumb stroked gently across her knuckles, the touch sending electricity up her arm. "Thank you for telling me," he said. "That matters, Mia. That changes how I approach this, how careful I need to be. Are you sure you want this with me tonight?" Mia looked at their joined hands, at the way his completely encompassed hers, strong and warm and somehow safe despite everything. "I am nervous," she admitted. "But yes, I want this. I want you." Dominic lifted her hand to his lips, pressed a kiss to her knuckles that felt more intimate than any kiss she had ever received. "Then I promise. I will take care of you. I will go slow. I will make sure you are ready for everything, every step. And the moment you want to stop, we stop. No questions. No pressure." "Okay," Mia whispered, and felt something settle in her chest. Trust. Terrifying and exhilarating at once. The car moved through Manhattan streets. Through her window, Mia could see the city sliding past, lights and people, and the river of life that never stopped flowing. But inside this car, inside this moment, there was only her and Dominic, and the promise of something that felt inevitable and chosen at once. His apartment was on the top floor of a building overlooking the Hudson River. All floor-to-ceiling windows and modern furniture that somehow managed to feel warm rather than sterile. Mia stood in the living room, looking out at the city lights reflected on the dark water, trying to calm her racing heart. She heard Dominic moving behind her, heard the soft sound of his coat being hung up, the clink of glasses. "Wine?" he asked, appearing beside her with 2 glasses of deep red. Mia took one, grateful for something to do with her hands. They stood side by side, looking out at the view, not touching, but close enough that she could feel the heat of his body. "It is beautiful," she said, meaning the view, meaning the apartment, meaning this moment, meaning everything. "It is now," Dominic said, and when Mia turned to look at him, she found him watching her instead of the window. Her pulse jumped. He set down his wine glass on the nearby table and took hers from her hand, setting it beside his. The gesture felt significant, weighted with intention. "Mia," he said softly, "I'm going to kiss you now. If you do not want me to, say so." Mia could not speak, could only nod, and then his hands were on her face, gentle and sure, tilting her head up as he bent down to close the distance between them. His lips touched hers softly at first. A question, a request for permission. Mia made a small sound in her throat and pressed closer. Dominic made a low noise of approval, deepening the kiss. His mouth was warm and skilled, moving against hers in a way that made her knees weak, made her forget every awkward kiss that had come before. His tongue traced her lower lip, and she opened for him instinctively, tasting wine and something darker. Something that was purely him. Time seemed to stop. Mia forgot about being nervous, forgot about her mother's warnings, forgot everything except the way Dominic's hand slid from her face into her hair, the way his body pressed against hers, solid and warm and wanting. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. "Bedroom?" he asked, his voice rough in a way that made Mia's stomach clench with anticipation. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and let him take her hand and lead her down a hallway to a room dominated by a massive bed with dark gray sheets. The lighting was solid, coming from lamps that cast gentle shadows. Dominic turned to face her, his hands going to her shoulders, just resting there. "We go at your pace. Tell me what you want, what feels good, what does not. Can you do that?" "I will try," Mia whispered. "Good enough," Dominic said, and kissed her again. Slower this time, his hands sliding down her arms to her waist. Mia felt his fingers find the zipper at the back of her dress, heard the quiet sound as he pulled it down slowly, giving her time to object. She did not. Instead, she let the dress slip from her shoulders, pool at her feet, leaving her standing in just her simple black underwear and bra. She fought the urge to cover herself, to hide, but Dominic's expression stopped her. He looked at her like she was precious, like she was art worth studying. "You are stunning," he said, his voice almost reverent, and Mia believed him. The first night, his hands came to her waist, just resting there, warm through the thin fabric of her underwear. The touch was light, but it anchored her, kept her from floating away on the tide of nervousness that threatened to overwhelm. "Can I touch you?" Dominic asked, his voice low and careful. "Where?" The word came out breathless. "Everywhere you will let me," he said honestly, "but we will start slow." His hands slid up her sides, over her ribs, coming to rest just below her breasts. Mia's breathing quickened. The room felt too warm and too cold at once. Every nerve ending seemed to fire at once, heightened by anticipation and fear and want all tangled together. "Is this okay?" he asked. She nodded, not trusting her voice. His thumbs stroked upward, grazing the underside of her breasts through her bra, and Mia gasped at the sensation. It was such a small touch, but it sent sparks racing through her body, pooling as heat between her thighs. "Still okay?" "Yes," Mia managed. He reached behind her, unhooked her bra with practiced ease, and slid it down her arms. The cool air hit her skin, and her nipples tightened immediately. Dominic made a low sound of appreciation, his hands coming up to cup her breasts, his thumbs circling her nipples in a way that made her moan. "You are so responsive," he murmured, bending his head to press kisses along her jaw, down her neck. "I love that. I love every sound you make." Mia's hands found his chest, fumbling with the buttons of his shirt. He helped her, shrugging out of it and tossing it aside. Her breath caught at the sight of him. He was lean and muscular, his chest and abdomen defined in a way that suggested regular exercise. There was a trail of dark hair that disappeared into his waistband. Her hands touched his skin tentatively, feeling the heat of him, the way his muscles jumped under her fingers. "You can touch me," Dominic encouraged. "Anywhere you want." Mia explored slowly, learning the landscape of his body, the dips and planes, and the way his breathing changed when her fingers traced certain paths. She wanted to memorize this, the feel of him, the reality of desire without shame or fear. Dominic's hands continued their patient exploration, sliding down her stomach to the waistband of her underwear. He hooked his fingers in the elastic, paused, looked at her face for permission. Mia nodded and he slid them down slowly, kneeling as he did, pressing kisses to her hip bones, her thighs, the inside of her knee. She stepped out of them, completely bare before him, and felt vulnerable and powerful at the same time. Dominic stood, his hands returning to her waist, and guided her backward until her legs hit the bed. "Lie down," he said softly. Narrator, 50 years later. The voice that emerged now was not the young woman trembling on the edge of discovery, but Mia at 74, sitting in her armchair with the weight of decades in wisdom in her tone. What happened that night when... Well, that is between Dominic and me. Some moments are too sacred to share in detail, even with the passage of time. But I can tell you this, he was patient, more patient than I had any right to expect. When it hurt, because it did at first, he held still. "Let me adjust. Let my body learn to accommodate his." He whispered encouragement and praise, and never once made me feel like I was anything less than precious. My mother had filled my head with warnings about men who take, men who use, men who see women as conquest to be collected and discarded. But Dominic, he gave. He gave me time. He gave me control. He gave me the experience I had been too afraid to reach for. And when the pain faded into something else, something that built and built until it crashed over me in waves that made me cry out his name, I understood for the first time what all the poetry and songs had been trying to tell me. That physical intimacy, when done with care and genuine desire, was not something to fear. It was a gift, a language spoken with bodies instead of words. That night, I crossed a threshold I could never uncross, but I did not want to go back. I only wanted more. Morning light, Mia woke slowly, consciousness returning in gentle waves. For a moment, she was disoriented. The room was unfamiliar, the sheets softer than hers, the bed bigger. Then memory flooded back and heat rose in her cheeks. She was in Dominic's bed. She had slept with Dominic. She had lost her virginity to a man she had known for less than 48 hours. The practical part of her brain, the part that sounded suspiciously like her mother, started cataloging all the reasons this was reckless and dangerous and foolish. But the rest of her, the part that still felt the pleasant ache between her thighs, the part that remembered how Dominic had looked at her like she was precious, whispered that sometimes the best things in life required risk. She became aware of warmth against her back, of an arm draped over her waist, of breath stirring her hair. Dominic was still asleep, his body curved around hers in a way that felt protective and possessive at once. Mia let herself enjoy it for a moment, this feeling of being held, being wanted, being chosen. Then carefully trying not to wake him, she started to ease out of bed. The arm around her waist tightened immediately. "Where are you going?" Dominic's voice was rough with sleep, deeper than usual, and it did things to Mia's insides that should have been illegal. "Bathroom," she whispered. The arm loosened and Mia slipped out, finding his bathroom off the bedroom. It was all marble and chrome, intimidatingly expensive. But the sight of her reflection in the mirror stopped her short. Her hair was wild, her lips slightly swollen, and there were marks on her neck and collarbone, evidence of Dominic's mouth on her skin. She looked different, felt different, like she had crossed some invisible threshold and could not go back even if she wanted to. When she returned to the bedroom, Dominic was propped up against the headboard, the sheet pulled around his waist, his chest bare in the early morning light. He looked unfairly good for someone who had just woken up. "Come here," he said, holding out a hand. Mia crossed to the bed, suddenly self-conscious about her nakedness in the morning light. But Dominic pulled her onto the bed and into his arms before she could think about covering herself. "How do you feel?" he asked, his hands gentle on her back. "Sore?" Mia nodded against his chest, feeling the warmth of his skin, the steady beat of his heart. "I will run you a bath," Dominic said. "Hot water will help." He started to get up, but Mia stopped him with a hand on his arm. "Can I ask you something first?" she said. "Anything." She took a breath, trying to find the right words. "Last night, What is this between us? I do not want to assume anything, but I also do not want to be naive about she could not finish. Could not quite bring herself to ask if this was just a one-night thing, if she was just another woman in a long line. Dominic's expression softened. He cupped her face in both hands, making her look at him. Mia, he said seriously, I do not do casual. I do not bring women here. I do not share this space with anyone. What happened last night was not just sex to me. It was you trusting me with something precious and me wanting to be worthy of that trust. So what does that mean? Mia asked quietly. It means I want to see you again, Dominic said. And again, it means I want to take you to dinner and buy you paintings and learn everything there is to know about you. It means I want to wake up with you in my bed more mornings than not, if that is what you want too. Mia felt tears prick her eyes, overwhelmed by the honesty of it, by the way he laid out exactly what he wanted without games or pretense. That is what I want, she whispered. Good, Dominic said and kissed her softly. The revelation, but there was more. Dominic pulled back, his expression shifting to something more serious. I need to tell you something, he said, about my past, because I want you to understand why last night mattered so much to me. Mia waited, her heart picking up speed. I was engaged once, Dominic said, 5 years ago, to someone my family approved of. Catherine. She came from the right family, went to the right schools, moved in the right circles. He paused, his jaw tightening. We looked perfect on paper. Same background, same social class, same expectations, but I did not love her, and she did not love me. She loved the heart name, the money, the status that came with being attached to the family business. Mia felt something twist in her chest. She had wondered about his past, about why a man like him was single at 34. I broke it off 3 months before the wedding, Dominic continued. My family was furious. They said I was throwing away a strategic alliance, that I was being selfish and short-sighted, that I would never find someone better suited to the life I needed to lead. His eyes found hers, intense and vulnerable at once. I swore after that I would never settle for someone who wanted the exterior instead of me. Never be with someone who saw me as a means to an end rather than a person. And for 5 years, I kept that promise. I dated casually, kept my walls up, did not let anyone get close enough to disappoint me. He touched her face gently. And then you walked into that gallery, and you saw me, Maya. You saw me before you knew my last name. Before you knew about the money or the penthouse or the investment firm, you looked at me and saw a person who appreciated art, who got lost and found Italian restaurants, who wanted conversation more than conquest. His voice dropped lower. That is why this matters. That is why you matter, because you see me, the real me, not the exterior. Mia was crying now, overwhelmed by his honesty, by the trust he was placing in her. I see you, she said, and I want to keep seeing you. Dominic pulled her close and held her while she cried, his hands stroking her hair, and Mia felt something settle in her chest, something that felt dangerously close to falling in love. Later, he ran her a bath in his enormous tub, the water hot and scented with something that smelled like eucalyptus. Mia sank into it with a grateful sigh, feeling the heat soothe her aching muscles. Dominic disappeared for a few minutes and returned with coffee and toast on a tray, setting it on the edge of the tub within her reach. Breakfast in the bath, he said with a slight smile. Decadent of you. You have corrupted me, Mia said, but she was smiling as she sipped the coffee. It was perfect. Black, just like she had ordered at the restaurant, like he had paid attention to that small detail. Dominic sat on the floor beside the tub, his back against the wall, just keeping her company. They talked easily about nothing important, about plans for the day, about the gallery show, about small, beautiful things that filled comfortable silence. At one point, Mia looked over at him, this successful, powerful man sitting on his bathroom floor just to be near her, and felt something shift in her chest, something that felt dangerously close to falling. The first week, the pattern established itself quickly. They had dinner 3 times that first week, each time at a different small restaurant Dominic knew. Places tucked into side streets, family-owned, where the food was excellent and the atmosphere intimate. They talked for hours, learning the small details that make up a person. Dominic learned that Mia took her coffee black because adding cream felt wasteful, a habit from college when money was tight. That she read poetry when she was sad, preferring the contained emotion of verse to the sprawling chaos of prose. That she had always wanted a dog, but never had space for one. Mia learned that Dominic had built his company from near bankruptcy after his father's death, turning a failing firm into something successful through sheer determination and risk. That he played piano when he could not sleep, filling the empty hours with Chopin and Debussy. That he had spent 6 months in Japan learning traditional woodworking because he wanted to understand craft from the inside out. The physical aspect of their relationship developed with the same careful attention Dominic had shown that first night. He never assumed, never pushed, always asked permission, even when they both knew the answer would be yes. Narrator. Those first weeks were discovering. Not just physically, though that was revelation. Learning that my body could feel pleasure I had not imagined. That desire was not something to fear, but something to embrace. That intimacy could be playful and intense and tender all at once. But more than that, we were discovering who we were together. That we could be serious and silly, vulnerable and strong. That love, because I was starting to realize that was what this was, did not have to look like my parents' bitter divorce or my mother's warnings. It could look like Sunday mornings reading the newspaper together in comfortable silence. Like him remembering I hated cilantro without being told twice. Like me learning his coffee order and having it ready when he arrived. It was the small intimacies that bound us more than the physical ones. The way he looked at me when I was talking about art, like every word mattered. The way I found myself thinking about him at odd moments, wanting to share some small observation or joke. The way coming home felt different now, because home was wherever he was. The mother, but reality has a way of intruding on even the most perfect bubbles. 3 weeks in, Mia's mother called, Sarah Clark, single mother, divorced and bitter about it, overprotective to the point of suffocation. I want to come visit, Sarah said over the phone. I miss you, sweetheart. It has been too long. Mia's stomach dropped. She had not told her mother about Dominic, had not mentioned that she was spending most nights at a man's penthouse, had not breathed a word about falling in love with someone her mother would definitely not approve of. Mom, it is a bad time, Mia tried. We have 3 exhibitions opening back to back, and I am swamped. You are always swamped, Sarah said, that particular note of wounded martyrdom in her voice. I just want to see my daughter. Is that so terrible? And so Sarah came. Showed up at the gallery on a Thursday afternoon unannounced because of course she did. Mia was in the back office when Rachel, her colleague and best friend, stuck her head in. Your mom is here, Rachel said, her expression sympathetic. Rachel had met Sarah before. Rachel understood. Mia found her mother standing in the main gallery, examining a sculpture with the critical eye of someone determined to find fault. Sarah Clark was 52 but looked older, worry and bitterness having carved lines around her mouth and eyes. Mom, Mia said, forcing brightness into her voice. This is a surprise. Sarah turned, and her face softened when she saw her daughter. Whatever else could be said about Sarah Clark, she loved Mia deeply and fiercely, and with a terror that bordered on obsession. They hugged, made small talk about the gallery and the weather in Sarah's book club. And it might have been fine, except that Mia's phone sitting on the reception desk lit up with a text from Dominic. What time will you be home tonight? Sarah saw it before Mia could grab the phone, saw the name, saw the implication in that single word. Home. Who is D? Sarah asked, her voice going very still in the way that meant trouble. Why is he asking what time you will be home? Mia felt her stomach knot. Just someone I am seeing. Seeing. Sarah repeated the word like it was foreign. How long? 3 weeks. Sarah's face went through several expressions at once. Surprise, concern, the beginning edges of anger. 3 weeks, and he is asking when you will be home? Mia, please tell me you are not living with someone after 3 weeks. I am not, Mia said, which was technically true. She still had her apartment, still paid rent. The fact that she had not slept there in 2 weeks was beside the point. But he asked me to. Sarah's face went white. Where did you meet him? What does he do? How old is he? The questions came rapid fire, each one sharper than the last. Mia answered as honestly as she could, while trying to minimize the aspects she knew would trigger her mother's protective instincts. Met at the gallery. He is in finance. He is 34. Sarah's expression darkened with each answer. And when Mia admitted, because she was tired of lying, that yes, they were sleeping together, Sarah's face crumpled. 3 weeks, she said again, her voice breaking. 3 weeks, and you are giving yourself to a man 10 years older who wants you to move in. Mia, that is not love. That is control. It is not like that, Mia tried. But Sarah was on a roll, all the fear and trauma from her own failed marriage pouring out. Men like that, older men with money, they prey on young women who do not know better. They sweep you up and make you feel special and needed, and then they use you up and throw you away, just like your father did to me. He is not Dad, Mia said, her voice rising. He is nothing like Dad. They never are, Sarah shot back. Until they are, I raised you to be smarter than this, to protect yourself, to not throw your life away on a man who will get bored the moment the novelty wears off. The words hit like physical blows. All of Mia's insecurities, all her fears, given voice by the person whose opinion mattered most. You do not even know him, Mom. And you do? Sarah's voice was cruel now, sharp with fear, masquerading as anger. After 3 weeks, Mia, when this falls apart, and it will, do not come crying to me. I warned you. She left, just turned and walked out of the gallery, leaving Mia standing in the middle of the space feeling like she had been hollowed out. That night at Dominic's apartment, Mia was quiet, distant. He noticed immediately, the way he always seemed to notice everything about her. What is wrong? He asked gently. Nothing, she lied. Just tired. He did not push, but she felt his eyes on her throughout the evening. In bed that night, she could not sleep. Her mother's words echoed in her head like poison. Prey on young women who do not know better. Novelty wears off. 3 weeks and you think you know him. Dominic woke when she shifted for the third time. Mia, he said quietly, talk to me. She told him. About her mother showing up, about the confrontation, about the warnings and accusations. She could not bring herself to repeat the worst of it, but enough that he understood. Dominic sat up, turned on the bedside lamp, and looked at her with an expression that was equal parts hurt and understanding. Are you, he asked, making a mistake? Do you think this is too fast? His vulnerability in that moment, his willingness to hear the truth even if it hurt, made Mia want to cry. I do not know, she admitted. Sometimes I am sure. Sometimes I am terrified. Dominic took both her hands in his. I am terrified too, he said. Every day. Terrified you will realize I am not worth the risk. That you will wake up and see all the ways I am damaged and decide to leave. But Mia, fear does not mean it is wrong. Sometimes fear means it matters enough to be scary. It was the right thing to say. The only thing that could have cut through the noise of her mother's warnings. Because he was not denying the fear. He was acknowledging it, meeting her in it. They fell asleep holding each other, but something had shifted. Some seed of doubt had been planted, and Mia could feel it taking root, the friend. It got worse before it got better. At the gallery the following week, Rachel pulled Mia into the storage room for a conversation. Rachel was 25, funny and sharp, and one of the few people at work Mia considered a real friend. We need to talk, Rachel said, about Dominic. Mia felt her defenses go up immediately. Rachel saw it and softened her approach. Look, I am saying this because I care about you. But Mia, you have changed. You are always at his place, always with him. What happened to your independence? Your boundaries? I am happy, Mia said. Are you? Rachel challenged. Or are you so caught up in the romance of it all that you cannot see the power dynamics at play? He is 10 years older, worth millions. You make $45,000 a year. How is that equal? How can you ever really say no to him? The words landed because they echoed the same fears her mother had voiced, the same doubts that kept her awake at night. He does not use his money to control me, Mia said, but her voice lacked conviction. That is what makes it insidious, Rachel said gently. The control is subtle. Fancy dinners you cannot afford to reciprocate. His apartment you could never match. Gifts you cannot return in kind. Eventually you will feel like you owe him, like you cannot leave even if you want to. Mia wanted to argue, wanted to defend Dominic and their relationship, but the seeds of doubt were growing, fed by fear and external pressure, and she found she could not form the words. That night, 1 month to the day since they had first met, Dominic asked her to move in officially. They were in bed, post-coital and relaxed, and he said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. I hate the nights you are not here. I hate waking up without you. I want your books on my shelves and your coffee cup in my sink and your presence in every room. It should have been romantic. It was romantic, but all Mia could hear was her mother's voice, her friend's warnings, the chorus of doubt that had been building for days. Her hesitation must have shown on her face because Dominic sat up, his expression shifting from hopeful to guarded. You are not sure, he said. Not a question, an observation. It is so fast, Mia said. Everyone says it is too fast. My mother thinks you are using me. My best friend thinks the power dynamic is unhealthy. And part of me wonders if they are right. If I am being stupid and reckless and blind. The words came out in a rush, all the fear and uncertainty pouring out at once. Dominic's face went very still, and Mia watched him close off in real time, walls going up to protect himself from the hurt she was inflicting. "What do you think?" he asked quietly. "Not your mother, not your friend, you." It was a fair question, and Mia forced herself to answer honestly. "When I am with you, I am happier than I have ever been, but I am also scared. Scared of losing myself, scared of becoming dependent, scared that this is too good to be real." Dominic ran his hands through his hair, a gesture of stress she was learning to recognize. "You want to know why I am single at 34? Why I have never lived with anyone?" He looked at her with raw honesty. "Because I spent 6 years building walls, keeping people at arm's length, only letting them see the surface. And then you walked into that gallery and saw straight through to everything I have been hiding. That terrified me. Still terrifies me." He took her hand. "But I would rather be terrified with you than safe and alone without you. So yes, it is fast. Yes, it is scary. Yes, we are both risking everything. But Mia, some things are worth the risk." Mia felt tears streaming down her face. She wanted to say yes, wanted to leap, but the fear was too loud. "I need time," she heard herself say. "I need space to think clearly. To be sure." Dominic's face went blank. Not angry, just empty, like she had reached inside and torn something vital out. "How much time?" he asked. "I do not know. I cannot think when you are looking at me like that." He nodded once sharply and got out of bed, started pulling on clothes. His movements were controlled, but she could see the tension in every line of his body. "Okay," he said. "Take the time you need." Mia got dressed in silence, gathered her things and left. Walked back to her own apartment for the first time in weeks. The small studio felt cramped and lonely. The bed too narrow. The silence too loud. She had asked for space. She had gotten it, and it felt like suffocating. The separation, 3 days. That was how long Mia lasted in her own apartment before she realized that safety was not the same as happiness. 3 days of waking up alone in her narrow bed, reaching for warmth that was not there. 3 days of silence that felt oppressive rather than peaceful. 3 days of her mother's voice in her head, growing quieter while her own regret grew louder. On the first day, Rachel came by with wine and sympathy. They sat on Mia's threadbare couch and Rachel apologized. "I was wrong," Rachel said, her voice small. "I thought I was protecting you, but I saw your face when you came back. You look miserable, Mia, really miserable." "I feel like I amputated a limb," Mia admitted, staring at the wine glass in her hands. "Like I cut away part of myself and now I cannot stop bleeding." Rachel put her arm around Mia's shoulders. "Then maybe he really does make you happy. Maybe I was projecting my own fears onto your situation." On the second day, Mia tried to work. Threw herself into the gallery, organizing inventory, updating the website, anything to keep her hands busy and her mind occupied. But everything reminded her of Dominic, the abstract painting where they met, the catalog she was editing for a collector who mentioned knowing him, the empty space at her desk where her phone sat silent because he was respecting her request for space. That night, she found herself praying for the first time in years. Not the rote prayers from childhood, but something raw and honest. "God, if this is wrong, why does it hurt so much to be away from him? If my mother is right, why does being safe feel like dying?" On the third day, she understood. Her mother's voice in her head was not wisdom, it was trauma. Sarah's fear of being hurt again had been shaping Mia's entire life, keeping her small and safe and alone. But Dominic was not Mia's father, and Mia was not her mother. She did not have to repeat someone else's story. The biggest risk was not being hurt. The biggest risk was never trying at all. That evening, as the sun was setting and casting long shadows through her apartment, Mia grabbed her coat and her keys. She still had the key to Dominic's place, the one he had given her in week 2, a small piece of brass that felt heavy with significance in her pocket. She took a cab because walking would take too long, and she was afraid if she gave herself time to think, she would lose her nerve. The return. His building doorman recognized her, nodded her through without question. The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless. Her heart hammered against her ribs. What if 3 days had been too long? What if he had decided she was not worth the trouble? What if she had broken something that could not be repaired? She let herself in quietly. The apartment was dark except for one light in the living room. As she moved through the entryway, she heard it. Piano music. Chopin, she thought, though she was not sure. Melancholy and beautiful and heartbreaking. She followed the sound to a room she had never entered before, a music room with a grand piano positioned near the windows. Dominic sat at the keys, playing with his eyes closed, completely absorbed. He wore sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair uncombed, and he looked more vulnerable than she had ever seen him. He must have sensed her presence because his hands stilled on the keys. He opened his eyes and turned to look at her. His face went through several expressions at once. Hope, wariness, pain. He did not stand, did not rush to her, just sat there, waiting for her to speak first. I am sorry, Mia said. Her voice cracked on the words. I am so sorry. I let fear win. I let other people's trauma become my truth. And I hurt you. Dominic's jaw worked, but he did not speak. These 3 days have been the worst of my life, Mia continued. She was crying now, could not stop the tears even if she wanted to. Not because I was alone. I have been alone my whole life. But because I finally knew what it felt like to not be alone, and then I chose loneliness anyway out of fear. She took a step closer. My mother was hurt, badly, and she has spent my entire life trying to protect me from the same pain by teaching me to be afraid of everything, to trust nothing, to keep my heart locked up so tight that no one could ever get close enough to break it. Another step. But you know what I realized? A heart that never breaks is a heart that never opens. And I do not want to live like that anymore. I do not want to be safe and small and alone. She was standing right in front of him now, close enough to touch. I have been so scared of becoming my mother, of trusting someone who will hurt me, but I realized I was so busy protecting myself from her pain that I was creating my own. She took his hands in hers. You asked if I want to move in. The answer is yes. Not because I am naive or reckless, not because you swept me off my feet with money or charm, but because I choose you. I choose this, even though it is scary, especially because it is scary. Dominic's eyes were wet. His hands tightened on hers. You are sure? His voice was rough, raw with emotion. Because I cannot do this if you are going to run every time you get scared. I need to know you are all in, that you are choosing this with your eyes wide open. I am all in, Mia said. I am choosing you, us, everything. Dominic stood then, pulling her into his arms, and kissed her with a desperation that made her knees weak. It was not gentle. It was hungry and relieved and slightly angry and completely overwhelming. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. Do not do that again, he said against her hair. Do not leave me for 3 days thinking I lost you. I will not, Mia promised. I am sorry. I am so sorry. That night, they made love with a new intensity, the intensity of almost losing each other, of understanding how fragile this thing between them was, and choosing to protect it anyway. And when it was over, lying tangled together in his bed, Mia felt something settle deep in her chest. Peace. Real peace, the kind that comes from making a choice and knowing it is the right one, fear and all. Narrator, that was the moment I truly grew up, not when I lost my virginity. That was just biology, just crossing a physical threshold. But this, choosing love over fear, choosing vulnerability over safety, that was when I became an adult. I moved in the next week, packed up my small studio apartment, and brought my life to his penthouse. My books found homes on his shelves. My coffee cup sat next to his in the kitchen. My presence filled the space that had been his alone for so long. It was not always easy. We had to learn to live together, to navigate the small frictions of cohabitation. He was neat to the point of obsession. I left books open on every surface. He needed silence in the morning. I needed conversation, but we learned, we adjusted. We made space for each other in ways that mattered. And for 3 months, we were happy, completely, dizzyingly happy, the pregnancy scare. Then came November, 4 months after they met, 3 months since she moved in. Mia's period was late, 5 days late. She tried not to panic, tried to tell herself it meant nothing. Stress could delay a cycle. She had been under a lot of stress with work and the move and the emotional upheaval of the past months. It was probably nothing. But on day 6, she bought a test, 3 tests actually, because she could not trust just one. She took them in the gallery bathroom during her lunch break because she could not wait until evening, could not spend 1 more hour not knowing. All 3 were positive. Mia stared at the little plastic sticks lined up on the bathroom counter, her hands shaking. Pregnant. She was pregnant. They had been so careful. Used protection every time. But apparently careful was not careful enough. She was 24 years old. She had been with Dominic for 4 months. They were not even engaged. This was not the plan. This was not how it was supposed to happen. That evening, she stood in the kitchen of their apartment, unable to eat the dinner Dominic had prepared, unable to think about anything except the 3 positive tests hidden in her purse. Mia, Dominic's voice cut through her spiral. You have been staring at that pasta for 10 minutes. What is wrong? She could not look at him, could not form the words. So she went to her purse, pulled out the tests, and set them on the counter between them. Dominic stared at them for a long moment, his face unreadable. Then he looked up at her. You are pregnant. It was not a question, but she nodded anyway. His next words surprised her. How do you feel about it? Not what do we do? Not how did this happen? Not any of the panicked reactions she had been expecting. Just how do you feel? Terrified, Mia admitted. This was not the plan. I am 24. We have only been together 4 months. I am not ready to be a mother. Dominic came around the counter and took her hands. What do you want to do? The question was so gentle, so devoid of pressure, that Mia felt tears prick her eyes. I do not know, she whispered. What do you want? Dominic was quiet for a moment, his thumb stroking over her knuckles. Honestly, part of me is terrified too. We are still new. This would change everything. He paused, and one of his hands moved to rest gently on her still flat stomach. But part of me can picture it. You, me, a baby, a family. His eyes found hers, intense and serious. But Mia, it is your body, your choice. Whatever you decide, I am here. I will support you completely. The relief that flooded through her at those words was physical. He was not pressuring her, was not making this decision for her, was giving her agency over her own body and her own future. I need to see a doctor, she said, to confirm, to understand options. We will go tomorrow, Dominic said, together. They got an appointment the next day with Dominic's personal physician, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She did a blood test, had them wait in the office while the lab rushed the results. When she came back, her expression was carefully neutral. Your HCG levels are very low, she said, around 15. That could mean a very early pregnancy, or it could indicate a chemical pregnancy. What does that mean? Mia asked. A chemical pregnancy is a very early miscarriage, usually before 5 weeks. The embryo implants but does not develop. It is quite common. About 30% of pregnancies end this way, usually before the woman even knows she is pregnant. The doctor looked between them. We need to do another blood test in 48 hours. If the levels are rising appropriately, the pregnancy is likely viable. If they are falling or stagnant, it will likely end in miscarriage within the next week or 2. So they waited. 2 days of uncertainty. 2 days of Mia's hand going unconsciously to her stomach, touching the place where a life might or might not be growing. 2 days of Dominic being extra gentle with her, his eyes watching her with concern and something else. Something that looked like hope. She realized with surprise that part of her wanted it to be real. Wanted this baby that she had not planned for and was not ready for. And she could see in Dominic's eyes that he felt the same way. They were not ready, but if it happened, they would figure it out. The second blood test came back with levels at 12. Falling, not rising. I am sorry, the doctor said gently. This is a chemical pregnancy. Your body will likely miscarry naturally within the next few days. It will feel like a heavy period. If the bleeding becomes excessive or you develop fever, call me immediately. Mia nodded, numb. That night, her period came, heavy and painful, carrying away the possibility of a life before it ever really began. She curled up in bed, feeling cramped and confused about why she was sad when this should have been relief. Dominic held her, his hand on her stomach, and she realized he was crying too. Crying for something they had not planned and did not expect, but had somehow, in the span of a week, allowed themselves to imagine. We will try again, he said quietly. When we are ready, when the time is right, we will have this. And Mia realized he was right. They would, not now, but someday, and knowing that settled something in her chest. The proposal. 5 months after they met, Dominic asked her to marry him. It was not elaborate. No restaurant proposal or Times Square spectacle. It happened in their bedroom on a random Tuesday night in February, snow falling outside the windows, city lights reflecting off the white-covered roofs below. They had just made love, were lying tangled in the sheets, hearts still racing, when Dominic reached over to the nightstand and pulled out a small velvet box. Mia's breath caught. I was going to wait, Dominic said, propping himself up on one elbow to look at her. Wait until we had been together longer. Wait until people could not say it was too fast. But then I realized I do not care what people say. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple and stunning. A single diamond on a platinum band. Classic. Timeless. I know we have been together less than 6 months, he continued. I know people will say it is too fast, that we barely know each other. But Mia, I have never been more certain of anything in my life. His voice was steady, but she could see the vulnerability in his eyes. I want to build a life with you. Officially. Forever. I want to marry you, not because it is practical or expected or the next logical step, but because I cannot imagine a future that does not have you in every part of it. He took her hand, his thumb stroking over her knuckles. You taught me that vulnerability is not weakness. That being seen completely is the greatest gift we can give each other. You made me brave enough to open my heart again after I had convinced myself it was safer to keep it locked away. His eyes were wet now. Marry me because I love you more than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. Marry me because every day with you is better than any day without you. Marry me because I want to spend whatever time we have building something beautiful together. Mia was crying, overwhelmed by the honesty, by the raw emotion in his voice. Part of her heard her mother's voice screaming that this was too fast, too risky, too much. But that voice was quieter now, drowned out by her own certainty. Yes, she said through her tears. Yes, of course, yes. Dominic slid the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, and then he was kissing her, both of them crying and laughing at once. They made love again, slower this time, waited with the knowledge of forever, and Mia had never felt more certain of anything in her life, the wedding preparations. They set a date for October, 8 months away. Long enough to plan, but not so long that the waiting felt unbearable. Sarah came back into the picture, cautiously. When Mia called to tell her about the engagement, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Mom, Mia said finally, you are sure about this? Sarah's voice was tight. You have only known him 6 months. I am sure, Mia said, and she was, completely. Another silence. Then Sarah sighed. I do not want to lose you, she said quietly. I know I have been difficult. I know my fears have made me say terrible things, but Mia, you are my only daughter. I love you so much, and I am terrified of watching you get hurt. Mia felt tears prick her eyes. This was the most honest her mother had been in years. Mom, you raised me with faith. You taught me to pray, to trust that there is a plan bigger than what we can see. Can you trust that maybe this is part of that plan? That maybe God brought Dominic into my life for a reason? She heard her mother's breath catch. I am trying, Sarah said. I really am trying, and I want to be part of your wedding. If you will let me. Of course, Mia said. I want you there, Mom. I need you there. But it was not easy. Sarah had opinions about everything. The venue should be a church, not the gallery where they met. The dress should be traditional white with a long train. The guest list should include distant relatives Mia barely knew. They fought, more than once. The worst was over the dress. They were in a bridal boutique in Manhattan, Mia trying on her 10th dress of the day. This one was simple, elegant, a column of white silk that fell to her ankles. No train, no embellishment, just clean lines and beautiful fabric. She stepped out of the dressing room and saw her mother's face fall. That is what you want? Sarah asked. It is so plain. You will regret not having a real wedding dress, one with a train and beading. Something traditional. This is what I want, Mia said firmly. You are making a mistake, Sarah insisted. Photos last forever. You will look back and wish you had gone traditional. Something inside Mia snapped. This is not your wedding, Mom. It is mine. Sarah's face crumpled. I know that. I just want it to be perfect for you. It will be perfect because it will be mine and Dominic's. Not yours, not Dad's, ours. The words came out harsher than she intended, but they needed to be said. Mia sat down on the pedestal in front of the mirror, still wearing the simple dress, and looked at her mother. I know you are scared for me. I know Dad hurt you badly, and you spent years trying to protect me from the same pain. But Mom, Dominic is not Dad, and I am not you. I need you to trust that I know what I am doing, that I am making this choice with my eyes open. Sarah was crying now. What if you are wrong? What if I am right and he hurts you? Then I will deal with it, Mia said. I will survive, just like you survived. But Mom, the alternative is living my whole life afraid to love anyone. And that is not living. That is just existing. She stood and crossed to her mother, took her hands. Can you be happy for me? Can you let go of your fear long enough to celebrate with me? Sarah looked at her daughter for a long moment, Then she pulled Mia into a hug. I am trying, she whispered. I love you so much, and I want you to be happy. If he makes you happy, then I will try to be happy too. It was not perfect, but it was a start. The wedding in October came with crisp air and turning leaves and a sense of everything aligning exactly as it should. The ceremony was held at the Meridian Gallery, the place where they had met 13 months earlier. The space was transformed with white flowers and candles, intimate and elegant. 50 guests, close friends and family only. Mia wore her simple dress, the one her mother had initially hated but had eventually admitted was beautiful. She carried white roses. Her mother's pearls were at her throat. Sarah walked her down the aisle, just the two of them, her mother's hand tight on her arm. When they reached Dominic, Sarah paused. Take care of her, she said quietly to Dominic. She is my whole world. She is mine too, Dominic replied. I promise. Sarah nodded once, kissed Mia's cheek, and took her seat in the front row. The ceremony was brief. The officiant spoke about love and commitment and building a life together. But Mia barely heard the words. She was too focused on Dominic's face, on the way he was looking at her like she was the answer to every question he had ever asked. Then came the vows. Dominic went first. Mia, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. 13 months ago, you walked into my life and changed everything. You taught me that the walls I built to protect myself were just keeping me lonely. You showed me that real strength comes from letting someone see all of you, not just the parts you think are acceptable. He took a breath. I promise to always see you, really see you, the way I saw you that first day when you were standing too close to a painting. I promise to be patient when you are scared and steady when you are unsure. I promise to love you not despite your imperfections, but because they make you beautifully, perfectly human. I promise to build a life with you that honors both who we are now and who we are becoming together. Mia was crying. She had promised herself she would not cry, but there was no stopping it. Then it was her turn. Dominic, she said, her voice shaking slightly, you made me brave. Before I met you, I was so afraid of being hurt that I had convinced myself I did not want intimacy, did not need connection. But you saw through that fear to the person underneath who was desperate to be known completely. She gripped his hands tighter. You did not just accept my vulnerability. You honored it, protected it, helped me see it as strength rather than weakness. I promise to always be honest with you, even when it is scary. I promise to let you take care of me while still maintaining who I am. I promise to celebrate your successes and hold you through your doubts. I promise to build a home with you that is filled with art and laughter and the kind of love that makes people believe in possibility. The officiant pronounced them married, and Dominic kissed her deeply, properly, with no regard for the small audience. Mia heard laughter and applause, but was focused only on his lips, his arms, the knowledge that he was now legally, officially, permanently hers. The reception was held at the small Italian restaurant where they had their first date. The owner had closed the place for Tamam, decorated it simply with candles and fall flowers. They ate and drank and danced. Sarah gave a toast, her voice thick with emotion, to my daughter who taught me that sometimes the scariest choices are the right ones, and to Dominic, who better take care of her or he will answer to me. Everyone laughed, including Dominic, who raised his glass to Sarah in acknowledgement. Rachel gave a toast next. To Mia, for being brave enough to choose love over fear. I was wrong, you were right, and I have never been happier to be proven wrong. Late in the evening, when most guests had left and only close friends remained, Dominic pulled Mia onto the small dance floor for one more dance. They swayed together in the dim light, his arms around her, her head on his chest. Happy? He murmured against her hair. Incredibly, Mia said. You? More than I have words for, Dominic replied. Thank you for saying yes that first night, to dinner, to everything that came after. Thank you for asking, Mia said, for seeing something in me worth pursuing, for being patient with all my fears. They held each other as the song ended, both knowing their life was just beginning. Married life, 1 year into their marriage, on a gray Saturday afternoon with rain pattering against the windows, Mia was reviewing gallery catalogs in their home office when she realized she needed to tell Dominic something. He was at his desk across the room working on financial reports, completely absorbed. She watched him for a moment. This man she had married, feeling a wave of affection so strong it made her chest tight. I am pregnant, she said. The words came out before she had planned them. Dominic's head snapped up, his eyes wide. What? I am pregnant, Mia repeated, her hand moving unconsciously to her stomach. I found out this morning. I was going to wait, plan some special way to tell you, but I could not hold it in. Dominic was across the room in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms. Are you sure? His voice was rough with emotion. I took 3 tests, all positive. I have a doctor appointment Tuesday to confirm, but yes, I am sure. Dominic pulled back, his hands framing her face, and she saw tears in his eyes. We are going to have a baby, he said, like he was testing the words. We are going to be parents. Are you happy? Mia asked, suddenly nervous. Happy? Dominic laughed, the sound slightly strangled. Mia, I am terrified and ecstatic and completely overwhelmed. We are going to have a baby, a person who is half you and half me. I am scared too, Mia Ma admitted. I do not know anything about being a mother. What if I am terrible at it? Dominic kissed her forehead, her nose, her lips. You are going to be amazing, he said with such conviction that she almost believed him. And I will be right there with you, probably making just as many mistakes, and we will figure it out together. Like we figure out everything else. The pregnancy progressed normally. Mia's body changed, her belly growing, and Dominic was attentive to the point of being overprotective. By month 7, she was huge and exhausted and ready to meet their daughter. Because the ultrasound had revealed they were having a girl. They named her Sophia, after Dominic's grandmother. The birth labor started on a Tuesday morning, 3 days before her due date. The contractions were mild at first, easy to breathe through. But within hours they had intensified to the point where Dominic was rushing her to the hospital, his face pale with worry. The labor was long, difficult. There were moments when Mia was certain she could not continue, could not push through the pain. But Dominic never left her side. He held her hand, coached her breathing, told her over and over that she could do this, that she was the strongest person he knew. When Sophia finally arrived, tiny and perfect and screaming her displeasure at the world, Mia held her daughter and felt something inside her shift permanently. This was what love looked like. Fierce, protective devotion to another human being. Dominic held Sophia with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face, and looked at Mia with such love and gratitude that she felt it like a physical force. You are incredible, he said. You made a person, Mia. You made our daughter. The first months were exhausting, sleepless nights and steep learning curves and moments of doubt. But Dominic was there, changing diapers at 3 in the morning, walking Sophia around the apartment when she would not sleep, supporting Mia through hormonal crashes and physical recovery, never complaining, never making her feel like she should handle it alone. Their partnership strengthened through the exhaustion and chaos. 50 years later, Mia's voice, that of a 74-year-old woman in her favorite armchair, brought the story back to the present. And that, sweetheart, is how I met your great-grandfather. Little Sophie looked up at her with wide eyes. Around them, the family gathered for their 50th anniversary, continued their celebration. Dominic, now 84, came into the living room carrying 2 cups of coffee, moving slower than he once had, but still with purpose. He handed one to Mia and settled into the chair beside hers, his hand automatically reaching for hers. Great-grandma, Sophie said. You were only 24 when you met great-grandpa. I was, Mia confirmed. Just a girl, really. Your great-grandfather was 34, 10 years older. Everyone said we were too young, too fast, too different. My mother thought I was making a terrible mistake. But you married him anyway, Sophie said, as if this were the obvious conclusion. I did, Mia said, squeezing Dominic's hand. 50 years ago this month. Dominic spoke, his voice still deep despite his age. Your great-grandmother was the bravest person I ever met. She chose love when everyone told her to choose safety. She chose vulnerability when everyone told her to protect herself. She chose me when she could have chosen someone easier. And I would choose you again, Mia said softly. Every time, without hesitation. Actually, their granddaughter came into the room then. Sophia herself, now 50 years old, with her own children and grandchildren. Mom and Dad, she said, everyone is ready for the cake. But before they moved to join the party, Mia turned to little Sophie one more time. Remember this, sweetheart. Love is not about perfect timing. It is not about being 100% certain before you take the leap. It is about finding someone who sees you, really sees you, and choosing to be brave. She touched the pearl necklace at her throat, the one her mother had given her on her wedding day. I was terrified that night I went to Dominic's apartment, terrified of being hurt, of making a mistake, of disappointing my mother. But you know what the biggest mistake would have been? Letting fear win. She looked at Dominic, at his lined face and silver hair, and the eyes that still looked at her the way they had 50 years ago. So when you are older and you meet someone who makes your heart race and your hands shake, and everyone tells you it is too soon or too fast or too risky, remember great grandma Mia, remember that I was scared too, but I was brave anyway, and it gave me 50 years of happiness. Little Sophie nodded solemnly, as if understanding the weight of wisdom being passed down. The family moved to the dining room for cake and more celebration. But for a moment, Mia and Dominic sat together in their chairs, hands clasped, looking at the life they had built. 50 years, one daughter, three grandchildren, two great-grandchildren, countless memories. All because a young woman had been brave enough to say yes when everything in her screamed to say no. All because a man had been patient enough to wait for her to choose him freely. All because sometimes the best things in life require us to be terrified and choose love anyway. Still my best decision, Dominic whispered. Still my bravest choice, Mia whispered back. And in the dining room beyond, surrounded by the family they had created, the laughter and love continued. A testament to what happens when courage meets vulnerability, when fear is acknowledged but not allowed to win, when two people choose each other again and again for 50 years. Some love stories are written in grand gestures and dramatic moments. Others are written in the quiet choice to stay, to try, to keep choosing even when it is hard. Theirs was both, a beginning written in passion and uncertainty, a middle written in commitment and growth, an ending, not yet written, but whatever came next, they would face it together. Just as they always had, just as they always would. The art of surrender, Mia had learned, was not about giving up. It was about giving in, to love, to trust, to the possibility that being vulnerable might hurt, but being closed off would slowly kill you. She had surrendered 50 years ago in a Manhattan penthouse to a man who promised to take care of her. And he had, every single day since. That was the real ending. Not a dramatic conclusion, but an ongoing commitment. Love as a daily choice, made and remade, through joy and hardship, through youth and age, through everything life could throw at them. And when the night ended and the family departed, and Mia and Dominic were finally alone in their apartment, he helped her to bed the way he had every night for 50 years. Gentle, patient, full of care. I love you, he said, as he had said every night for 50 years. I love you too, she replied, as she had replied every night for 50 years. And they fell asleep holding hands, two people who had taken a terrifying leap together and found that love, real love, was always worth the risk, always. The end.